Hello and welcome to the Chronologic live stream. Uh, Thank you everyone for joining us. Today the topic is going to be talking about some of our development updates, as well as some stuff that's upcoming in the next week that we're super excited for, including Devcon 4, and also giving an update on some of the integration stuff that we've done with MakerDAO. So the hosts for today's live stream are myself. I'm Logan. You can find me on Twitter or send me an email. And I'm joined by Joseph. So Joseph, would you like to say hello?
Hey guys, welcome. Glad to be back here, Logan. Thanks for the introduction. And yeah, we can get started with the live stream today. We're really excited to share all the stuff with you guys.
All right. So just to go over our agenda. First we'll give you guys an update about Devcon 4, which is coming up next week. Uh, then
Logan,
we'll go.
I think your screen is paused. Maybe you can unpause the screen. I think.
Oh,
That's much better. Perfect. Thanks,
all
Logan.
right. There we go, guys. Sorry about that. So let's go over the agenda for tonight. Um, we'll give an update on DevCon 4, and then we'll go into some of the development updates that we have, as well as we'll touch on the new white paper that we've just released that covers a lot of what we've done over the past year. And then we'll talk about some of the stuff we've been doing integrating the EAC with MakerDAO. So we'll have a section on managing your MakerDAO CDP using the EAC, the Ethereum Alarm Clock. And then we'll go into the questions and answers. So feel free to put questions into the question box throughout, but we'll probably save those until the end, and then we'll go through and answer them. So we're super excited because the biggest event of the year is happening next week. The biggest event in the Ethereum world. So this is DevCon. This is the fourth DevCon. It'll be in Prague, and Chronologic is a sponsor, as well as we'll have a table at the event, and we're going to be we're going to have a few different things going on. So we'll have a booth. At the booth, we'll be having a contest. The contest, you'll have a chance to win a T-shirt. There's going to be some steps to go through for that. You'll if you'll have to be attending the event. And if you are attending the event, come up to our booth on the first day and make sure you talk to us and learn how to register and participate in this contest, because we'll be doing drawings for T-shirts at the end of the day, each of the days of DevCon. So be sure to come talk to us. And then the really exciting thing is that we'll be hosting a workshop during the conference. So unfortunately, we didn't get a official spot, but we've been communicating with some of the DevCon organizers, and uh, we will be able to sign up for a workshop room and host a workshop on the EAC. So we're super excited to uh, go through the process of how to use the EAC with the developers that'll be attending DevCon. So now I'll hand it off to Joseph, and he'll talk about the development updates for this last week.
Thanks, Logan. So another thing we should mention just before the development updates, maybe Logan, you can just go back to the previous slide with DevCon. Yes. So as you guys know, everybody knows DevCon. It's the biggest event in the Ethereum space, and we're super excited to be there. But before the DevCon itself, there is another event at which Chronologic will be present at. Unfortunately, we don't have it in the slides now, but it will be the Ethereum Magicians Council. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with that, but it will be just kind of like a gathering of all the people in the industry discussing like EIPs and stuff like that. And Chronologic will be providing um, some sort of coverage, media coverage. We'll do some videos, editing, and we will also be participating in the EIP discussions. So I sent you guys a link in the chat box below. You guys can check it out. So it is the Ethereum Magicians Council workshop. It is on the October 29th to October 28th to the October 29th. So it is just like 2 days before DevCon. So if you guys will be around, be sure to check it out. So it's as you can see, Logan is showing it. So basically, we have the Council of Prague, and it's a free entry for all. So if you guys want to be a part of the system, be a part of all this ecosystem, be sure to join us there, and we'll see you guys there. Okay, we can jump into the dev updates now. And so as you guys have seen, we have a new version of the TimeNode 1.1.3 Quartum, and we've seen you guys have already started, updating it and testing it. So we'll go through some of the new changes we have in these. So we have a new Docker image for setting up a Dockerized container. So what you can do now is you can use Docker to set up the TimeNode DAPP within a Dockerized environment. So on our README on the GitHub repo, we have prepared a short 3-step process for containerizing this environment. So if you guys want to test it out, it's pretty straightforward. You just install Docker and you paste a couple of commands. First one is to create the image, to build the image. Second one is to run the image, and basically you're set to go. You can open it. You can open the DAPP in your browser, and the DAPP will just keep running in the Dockerized container. So if any of you guys are familiar with Docker, I'm pretty sure you guys will be happy about this. So we had a number of changes to the TimeNode core. So mostly fixes to make the TimeNode core basically less buggy and to try to mitigate as much of these transaction collisions that we've been having. So we have improved the bucket handling. We have improved. So buckets are basically kind of like containers for scheduled transactions. We kind of fetch them in buckets on a hourly basis. So we've kind of improved this bucket fetching. We have fixed the smart gas estimation problem. There has been a small issue with that has been fixed. We have fixed the reward calculation. Some of you guys have said that some of the transactions seemed unprofitable, even though they were unclaimed. But this was because the deposit was calculated as a part of the deposit was calculated into the profitability, even though it should not have been, because there has been no deposit set because there was no claim in that scheduled transaction. So this has been fixed. And then we have a couple of time remaining in the window calculations, and we have added a new parameter called minimum claim window. And this is just to avoid sending claims too late. So we have also added some default values to this, so you do not have to change anything yet, but you can play around with this new economic strategy value if you wish. So, okay, Logan, I'll give it back to you for some new updates on the white paper.
Okay, so we've been working on a new white paper. A lot of people have were bringing it to our attention that the white paper wasn't reflecting the work that we've done in the past year very well. So it was leading to a lot of confusion about what the current state of the development is, and what the future of the development will look like. So over the last couple weeks, we've been putting together this new technical white paper. So it's been a team effort from all of us on the Chronologic team. Uh, we've compiled a lot of the information that has been published and on the blog in various places. So before you would have to basically look at a bunch of different blog posts to get the idea of how the claiming mechanism in Chronos worked, for example, or how the Ethereum alarm clock time node uh, economic strategy worked. So what we did was try to compile all that information into something that's makes logical sense in from beginning to end, and makes it easy to find all this information in specific sections. So it goes over the Ethereum alarm clock, and it talks about all the pieces of that, and then it goes into some of the research we've done regarding Chronos. So anyone who's interested in getting a better idea of how these two protocols work, there's now no better place to get that information besides the white paper. So you can find the new white paper at chronologic.network/paper, and let us know what you think. So this next section, we'll talk about uh, how to manage your MakerDAO CDP using the Ethereum alarm clock. So quick refresher to anyone who uh, is joining us. So a couple weeks ago, we hosted a joint live stream with Sean Brennan from MakerDAO, where we kind of discussed uh, the DAI integration that we have in the DAPP. And then we went into some um, more theoretical use cases of how the Ethereum alarm clock protocol could integrate with the DAI stablecoin system. So the MakerDAO CDP is the collateralized debt position, and it's what makes the DAI stablecoin uh, collateralized in the system, and it's one of the key pieces to the whole DAI system. But what it is in just kind of like simple terms is it's just a contract that holds some of your ether and allows you to take out to loan yourself some DAI from the ether that you have as collateral. So we'll talk about two use cases where the Ethereum alarm clock can be used in the as one of the in the steps of the CDP. So how these two protocols can integrate and work together on a more kind of protocol level. So this first use case uh, is important if you have a debt position. So there's the possibility that if you have a debt position open, that if the collateralized asset, so Ether, falls in price, that your CDP will get liquidated, because essentially you loaned yourself some DAI from an amount of Ether, and the Ether is now worth less than how much DAI you've loaned yourself. So the system just liquidates your ether, sells it off, and you lose your ether. So that's obviously not a situation anyone wants to be in. Um, but sometimes life is busy and you can't always watch whether your CDP is safe or if it's in danger. So what you might want to do is set up a trustless recurring call using the Ethereum alarm clock to do that. So how do you do that? So right now there's not any kind of there's not a great user experience for doing that. You kind of have to know how to work with these systems on kind of like a lower level. So you have to write a smart contract to that has this logic inside of it. So let me see if I can give you a quick example here. Okay, so here's the example code I put together to show you how these two systems could interoperate. So you would create a contract, and the contract is named Save Dangerous CDP, since that's what it's doing. And then you just have to tell it what ID your CDP has, so which CDP it should save, and then you give it the addresses of the scheduler for the Ethereum alarm clock and the name of the MakerDAO kind of DAI system. They use the name tub for that. So you just pass it the tub, which is you pass it the address of the MakerDAO contract, the address of the EAC contract, and the identifier for your specific CDP. And then you start a scheduled call. So this has all the parameters that you would give to a scheduled transaction, and if you've scheduled a transaction using the DAPP, you've entered in all these parameters. It's of course a better user experience when you do it through the DAPP, but it's the same information, just now it's laid out into the code level. So the same stuff you pass in, and this will schedule the transaction. And then what this transaction does is will send a transaction to this same smart contract. So that might sound a bit out there. Like, why would you want to schedule a transaction to this same smart contract? But that's actually where the magic kind of lies in this whole idea. Because what that scheduled transaction will do when it comes back to this contract is execute what's called the fallback function. So the fallback function happens when there's no call data attached to the transaction. And if you look up here, we just pass an empty array of bytes. So it'll trigger this. And then what we do here is, so the key logic is actually kind of just these 5 lines of code right here. And what this does is it checks if your CDP is safe, and if it's not safe, it'll send more collateral to it to save it. If it is safe, all it does is schedule a new transaction. So it'll just restart the whole cycle. So for this example, I used 6 hours. So every 6 hours, this contract will schedule a new trustless CDP check. But depending on how what your risk profile looks like, you can have that check go through more often or have it go through less often to save gas. So that's the idea behind using the Ethereum alarm clock to save your MakerDAO CDP. And for the second one, I'll talk about how to do kind of a similar thing with a different purpose. So what if you wanted to use the Ethereum alarm clock to schedule a routine DAI payment instead of a routine collateral check? So what that would look like is actually something really similar to what we had in the last example. So you would create a wrapper contract like we did in the last example, except those last 5 lines of code that would check the safety of your CDP. Now we'll just send some DAI instead. So let me pull up that example. Okay, so basically the contract looks the same up to the fallback function. And just how I said before that these are kind of like the magic lines, it's the same thing here. So in this example, what's happening is you're scheduling a recurring DAI payment to happen every 7 days. And when that transaction comes back to this contract, it will send that DAI to your CDP. So you have a trustless recurring payment, which will repay your debt that you loan to yourself. So this uses the example of wiping your CDP. So that means repaying your debt. But you could do stuff like send recurring payments to anywhere or anyone. So you could do this to pay out employees, or you can do it to pay your monthly bills, to pay subscriptions. Anything that is kind of like a routine payment could be done using a contract that looks almost exactly like this. Besides, these 5 lines would look a little bit different depending on what your use case is. So so just one of the key things with this is that so the recurring payments, they don't actually have to lock up your funds. So you can have your funds be liquid that you want to send later. It just needs to have the funds available in the contract by the time that payment goes through. So it is a little bit better because you have the freedom to move your funds around, but you don't have to be present to send the transaction at the exact time it needs to go through. You just have to send the funds to the location by the deadline. So it makes things a little bit easier. And of course, you can send the funds as early as you want, but you can't send it later because if you sent it later, then the whole transaction cycle would stop. So these are a couple examples. These are just 2, but you could do a lot more with this as well. So I think we'll move into some Q&A now. And I see that we have some questions here.
Yep, we have a couple of questions. You want to take those?
Sure. So this first question says, would each interaction of the CDP check, for example, every 6 hours, cost gas to execute? Yes. So that's one of the trade-offs with having the recurring payment happen uh, more often than versus having it happen spaced out, is that you have to pay the gas costs each time. And the gas costs aren't that high. So we're talking on like the scale of maybe 20 cents to 50 cents, depending on the network gas price to do each one of these scheduled calls. But again, if you're doing that every 6 hours, it might add up to be a higher cost than you would want. So maybe not for every use case would it make sense to have a call go through every 6 hours. Maybe it only makes sense to have that call go through every 7 days. Or if it's paying a monthly bill, have that go through every 30 days. But for some applications, like if the prices of your collateral, so if the price of Ether is and is really volatile, and let's say you see the price going really close to your liquidation price, maybe what you'd want to do is have a contract then that is sending a transaction more often, even though it's costing you more gas or more fees as gas. But that could be worth it if it'll save your collateral. So maybe so the simple answer is yes. Yes, it does cost gas to execute. And okay, so we'll jump to this next question here. So will the CDP scheduled payments and distributions have a UI to enter your parameters? So right now, no, uh, but that's for right now. Uh, so you can, let's see, so okay, I was gonna say you can kind of do something like this through the DAPP now, but you would still have to deploy this contract in some way. So for right now, you have to know how to uh, deploy a contract using like Remix, for example. Remix is an online IDE, uh, but yeah, yeah, that's the answer.
Okay, we have another question here. So let's go to this one. So we've had some hiccups with the Ethereum alarm clock lately. When do you expect these to be over? Okay, so the hiccups that are in question here are the transaction collisions that we've been having, and this is currently because we have a lot of time nodes running, but still, a lot of people need to schedule in order to make use of these time nodes. So currently, basically, the time nodes are racing to claim and execute these transactions that have been happening on the network. But what happens is sometimes they collide, right, with these executions. So what happens is one of the time nodes would claim a transaction and the others will try to claim it, but by the time they get notified that it was claimed already, they have already sent the transaction, and unfortunately they lose their funds doing so, right? They lose the gas cost for running these transactions. And this happens because of a number of reasons, mostly network latency and maybe geographical positions of the nodes and stuff like that. So basically latency and there's only so much we can do when it comes to this with the current implementation of the Ethereum alarm clock, but we are doing our best to mitigate these. Some of these mitigations already live on the latest version of the TimeNode. So always be sure to update the latest version, which will have all the latest fixes and optimizations. So we expect these, once people start scheduling more transactions, we expect these to also be less of these transaction collisions. So, and once we get into the development, once we get a bit further down in the development line for the Chronos protocol, then we expect to eliminate these with the improved claiming mechanism. So hopefully this answers your question.
Yeah, I just want to add something to that as well. That so a lot of the hiccups that we're experiencing now are related to the cost optimizations of the time nodes, and like Joseph said, figuring out how to resolve the front running and the transaction collision problem. But from the scheduling perspective of anyone who's scheduled a transaction through the EAC, there hasn't been hiccups from that angle. So as a user scheduling, it's been a good process so far. So we have a question here from Leonardo. He asks if the tech for the MakerDAO EAC collaboration is ready to go. So I guess that kind of echoes my answer to the other question. That depends on what you consider ready to go. So if you know how to deploy a smart contract, everything is ready to go because you have MakerDAO on the mainnet, you have the EAC on the mainnet, and it just needs these two protocols just need a way to kind of talk to each other and to work together. And that's what the smart contract is doing. It's kind of just gluing these two together in a way that makes it nice to use. But if your definition for ready to go is is it a DAPP? Does it have like a nice user experience? Is there like a web page that users can visit? Then the answer would be no, not yet.
We have another question concerning the Docker implementation of the TimeNode. So we have a question, is it similar to running the TimeNode in a virtual machine? Well, yes, it is. So the nature of Docker is it's kind of like a very, very minimal virtual machine, but not exactly, right? So it doesn't have the overhead of the virtual machine. So it's like a very tiny application specific, kind of like a virtual machine. But yeah, so it's better than a virtual machine. And the last question we have from Wyatt is, are Timon still minting? I've had one since the ICO, and apparently it's not minting as much as before. So this is because the Chrono era has changed, and as the Chrono eras progress, they mint less and less DAI tokens. Okay. I think that will be it for today. Logan, thanks for explaining us all this stuff, and thanks for hosting the live stream as well.
Yep. Thanks to all the attendees who attended the live stream. Thank you, Joseph, for co-hosting with me. Everyone have a good day or good night, depending on where you are located.
Exactly, guys. And if you'll be in Prague next week on either Devcon or the Ethereum Magicians Workshop, let us know and we can catch up. Cheers, guys. Have a good day.